is a brief description of the consideration of legislation on the floors of the California State Legislature. As you might imagine, in both houses of the California Legislature, there are specific rules and procedures for considering legislation on the floors of the Assembly and Senate. These rules are in place pursuant to the joint rules, as well as the respective Assembly rules and Senate rules for their two houses. And all of these rules are an attempt to ensure the orderly management of bills and other forms of legislation on the floors of the California State Assembly and State Senate. In both houses, the leadership teams generally prefer to know when legislators plan to take up bills on the floor, particularly if there are controversial measures. For example, in the Assembly, legislators are asked to inform the Speaker's floor unit staff whether the legislature intends to take up a bill that is eligible for floor action. And this is generally expected to be noticed at least a day in advance of the scheduled floor session. In this way, the Speaker's staff knows whether the bill's author plans to take up the bill for debate and a vote, or whether they're going to offer amendments or take any other proposed action on the bill. It's also important for the floor analyses to be available for the measures that are going to be taken up so that legislators can be informed, obviously, prior to hearing the debate and having to cast a vote on a bill that's pending on the floor of the Senate or Assembly. In both houses, Democratic and Republican staff prepare floor analyses. For example, in the Assembly, the floor analyses are prepared by the Speaker's office, and then the Assembly Republican Caucus Office of Policy and Budget prepares them for Assembly members. What type of information is usually provided by legislative offices when bills are being analyzed for floor action? Well, among other things, they may be asked for additional background on the bill, the fact sheet, staff contact information, summary, or even a listing of the support and opposition letters that have come in, a list of individuals or organizations that may have been in contact for or against the bill. Sometimes the letters are sent directly to the committee that considered the bill rather than directly to the author. And in those instances, it's important for the legislator staff to get copies of those letters as well. They also ask generally for an author's statement in support of the bill. In both the Assembly and the Senate, the floor analyses are usually written by the first committee of reference. The Senate Secretary's Office of Floor Analysis and the Chief Clerk's Floor Analysis units are both nonpartisan and prepare the official analyses of all the legislation that appears on the floors of the Assembly and Senate. And the positions of organizations and individuals are generally taken from the committee records that they have showing support and opposition to the measure. When bills are pending in the other house, that is after they've passed their house of origin, floor managers are required to be used. These used to be called floor jockeys. However, in the last decade plus, we have referred to them only as floor managers. In other words, the Assembly bills on the Senate floor and the Senate bills on the Assembly floor need a legislator from that house to take up the bill for consideration and a vote on their floor in the other house. It's a necessary hurdle and should be done prior to the bill reaching the floor of the other house. Once that floor manager has been designated, then the bill author staff notifies the appropriate desk in the other house so that the floor manager's name is listed in the daily file along with the bill. It's important to remember also that during the 2 weeks preceding a deadline, the bills on the third reading file that are passed on file 2 or more times are usually sent to the inactive file. And the Assembly Chief Clerk and the Senate Secretary can provide valuable information at key times during the final weeks of the legislative session. And of course, throughout the year, they're always available.